Mixing with Mike, plugin of the week is the Universal Audio in conjunction with BrainworX Ampeg B-15N. This is an emulation, an amazing emulation of an all-time classic amplifier that was in every studio that I worked in and has been a part of so many classic records from the 60s through the 70s. This was an amplifier that was designed to be kind of a road gigging kind of amp, although its weight was just really, really heavy. But if you imagine a square cabinet, essentially the top, you could actually pull the top out. The amplifier was mounted onto a piece of wood that it was, that actually had, the finish like the rest of the amp, the exterior amp. And what you would actually do when you were going on your gig, you would actually pull that board out, flip the whole thing upside down, and the amplifier would actually be upside down, pointed into the cabinet. And then you would have two clips on the side, or buckles on the side, that would clamp it down, and then there would be a handle on the top, wheels on the bottom, and then you could wheel it off to your gig. When you got to the gig, what you would do is you would actually take the buckles off, turn the amplifier around, plug the output into the speaker cabinet right into the back, put the buckles down, and it would clamp, and then you would get to work. Now, what's really cool about this emulation is that it emulates actually two versions of the Ampeg B-15, one from 1964 and one from 1968, two different models. So what happens is the bias current on the two of them is different. That's the primary difference between the two of them. One is a variable cathode biasing, which is the 1964 emulation, and the other in the 1968 is a fixed bias. Now, on the normal amp, what you would have is you would have a big bass and guitar input, which would be input number one, and then you would have something that was sort of generically called instrument that you would plug in, and that would work on volume two. So you would have basically two channels that you could plug into with a volume control, which is an output amplifier control, and then you would have a treble and a bass setting for each. So when you actually set this up and you rig this up, you can actually run it into the UA console hardware, or the actual console application which runs the hardware. So if you have a UA interface, it will actually operate with the Unison technology. And so if you plug your bass directly into the high impedance input, or you're coming into a line input or mic input, you could actually get this running as the input stage coming in for recording, and then you could decide within the console setup whether you want to record that to the track or just monitor it as you're performing. Now, if you have a bass track, I have a bass track here, which is a DI, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it into this amp, and we can go through some of the different settings. So what you have is a high gain and low gain inputs for each. So depending upon the level of the input source, you could decide on which one you want just by clicking on it. And essentially you're feeding into two different amp stages. So you have the 1964 channel here, right? So this gives you the emulation of the 1964 version of the amp, and then the 1960, in this case, the 1966 version, not 68. I think I said 68 before. It's 66. So when you select it, in this case, I'm going to stay with the high level inputs. So we're going to bring this in, set this up, and we'll go through some of the settings. So these are the basic controls here. I'll kind of go through a little bit of them. They are slightly different. So you have the volume control here, which is fine for both of them. But when you get to the treble adjust, they're both at 5K, but the first one gives you plus minus 15 dB. So if it's set straight up and down, then you have no gain or attenuation. Not all amps work like that, where you're kind of a zero setting, and then you're just kind of guessing, and you're just kind of setting your tone accordingly. So straight up and down is no boost or attenuation. But on the 66, you have minus 30 and plus 18 at 5K. So it gives you extended range in terms of the gain. And then on the bass, it's 40 hertz for both, plus minus 10 dB, and then for whatever reason, plus minus 11 dB on the 66 channel. So that's what you have there. You have the two bias selections. So what's really cool with the bias selection here, you can see a different color showing up here. You get the two different amp emulations, but then you get the two different bias circuits that are set up as well, which you can run into and switch accordingly over here. And then you have the on-off, which is like a hardware bypass. And once you get past all of this, you also have the effects rack. So with the effects rack, you have a gate, and you could turn the gate, it defaults as on, but you could turn it off. You can set a range and a threshold. Then you also have 2 filters, a high pass and a low pass filter, which you could set either pre-amplification, so this would be before the amplification stage, or post-amplification. So you can actually filter if you have like a bass that has a lot of low-end rumble that's maybe giving you some weird artifacts or not quite sounding right going through, you can kind of filter that back prior to going into the amplifier stages. And then you could do it on the post. So you have some options here, and also on the low pass filter as well. So I'm going to bypass all of this stuff for right now. On this end, what you have is an input gain. What's really cool about this is it allows you to drive the input level and run it like you're overdriving the preamp stage of the amplifier itself. So you can drive this in a heavier way. And then there's a power soak on the back end. Now, power soaks are designed so that essentially what it's doing is it's allowing the amplifier to run and have the power being taken away, so it doesn't actually blow up the amplifier. And so the power soak would allow you to get a certain overdriven sound by really driving the amps without pushing a lot of volume through the speaker. And so the power soak would allow you to draw back from that. Okay. Now, what we have here also, which is very cool, is we have a whole series of emulations. So there are 43 options that you have here. And these are working with the original B-15, right? So this is the original 15-inch speaker. So we have a whole bunch of those, 21 of those options, using different microphones with and without EQ. So you can make your options there. But what they also did is they also emulated the 8x10 cabinet. And then we also have some others here with a 1x15 and then a 4x10 cabinets. And if you go to the empty play real cabinet, so what ends up happening with this, I think this is what this is actually, there was actually a preamp out on the B-15N, which would allow you to run through the amplifier stage, but essentially it would allow you to get the overdrive and the sound of the B-15 at the preamp stage, and then you could plug that into a direct box. So it's not like the speaker output, which you could not plug into a direct box, obviously, but it would allow you to grab the signal prior to the amplifier and maybe feed it into another amplifier if you wanted to, or into another cabinet. That was something, and I'm not exactly sure, but it basically sounds like it negates the cabinet, essentially, and allows you to kind of drive through accordingly. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with a default setup and everything, and then there's also a horn setting. Now, on the 8x10 cabinet, there was actually a piezoelectric horn that was included in that cabinet, which they emulated. Now, so it works actually on any of the selections that you make here. And so this is just something that's added in. There's no amount control or anything. It's depending upon how you select it and what the original sound is. Sometimes you hear it more clearly or cleanly than at other times, but it's an effect that you can just sort of drop in if you like. So that's a horn, which you can kind of add in. So this gives you all of that technology. But what we're going to do is going to bypass all of this stuff. Actually, we can leave this stuff up because there's nothing else really there. And then let's start running a little bit of sound through it. So we'll start with bypass, and then I'm going to go to a chorus section here where they play more consistently. And let's check out the sound from here before running it through the amplifier. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring up the volume here so we can hear this a little bit better. And I'm going to mark down where I was so we can kind of... And now let's run through and go through the basic amplification stages for the 64 and the 66. So again, this is with no other equalization. Now we're running through some different cabinets here. So if I wanted to, I'll just remember this. We can actually go through some of the different settings. What you can actually do is set it up so that every bar, it switches to a different setting. you get the basic idea here. So we can kind of toggle through some of the different settings and go through it. I'm just going to leave this, actually going to turn this off. So I'm going to click on the auto there, turn that off. I'm going to go back to the default setting here for a second. I'm going to set the... So one of the things that's amazing about this is that it drives a whole lot more low end and body, which is something that I was feeling I was missing from it. So let me bring in a little bit of... And if I wanted to overdrive this a bit, I could actually push the input gain up here and then start to drive this a little bit. And I can compensate for that. Actually, what I should probably do here is compensate for that at the power soak here, so I can drive this. This way it can maintain some good levels. And then you can get like that real overdriven setting here, which is really amazing with the original amp, just kind of overdriving it like that. But otherwise, there's a thing here where you can get a significant edge out of this by working with the input gain. So it's sensitive to that, and when you're bringing in a bass signal, you want to make sure that you're balancing that out and kind of giving yourself, you know, getting yourself like the right tone kind of coming into it, like the right character, like how much of an edge or a grit that you want to kind of add to it. Oops, I'm on the wrong amp. And now if this is a little bit too boomy here, we can actually play with working with the filter here with the tight control. This is prior to the amp. All right, so that has like a nice tone post amp, which allows me to just kind of tighten up that low end a little bit. He doesn't really go way low in notes here, but I can kind of give that a little bit of a tightness, and then I can also warm up the top end. And this can kind of give it a nice balance in a mix setting. Because you can see here, just like the character from it instantly is just really amazing. Let's see what the horn does, if that adds anything to the sound here. So with this tone, that actually makes a significant difference. It also adds like a little bit of an edge that would help it to cut through on smaller speakers. So let's blend this into the mix and see how we do from here. What I'll do is I'll take the vocals out, and then we'll try this. Okay, so let's try to go to the other setup, because maybe I want something that's a little bit cleaner and a little bit funkier, and that's probably going to work more in this end. So maybe it would have been a better idea to do this in with the music playing. So let's see what we can do there. You can hear the difference there with the bias setting. Where you can see how like just it completely brings the bass to life, and in terms of the sound, like the original bass sound on its own, just as a direct sound, is quite good. Bringing this in adds like a whole other dimension to the sound, and you can hear that right away. I just want to try one other thing here, driving it a little bit, and then we'll call it a demo here. All right, let's do a quick A/B. And I could actually probably push a little bit more volume here, but you could hear like the depth in the body and the openness that it brings to the bass sound. Really amazing emulation. There aren't a whole lot of B-15 emulations out there that I've seen, and this one has really blown me away in terms of the authenticity and design. And I haven't even gotten into any of the different settings here with the different setups, and because this plays like a whole other huge thing. Give you a whole other different options. Always like ribbon mics. I've also optimized it for this, so I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, this is an amazing emulation of an all-time classic bass amp, another one that goes along with the SVT collection from BrainWorx. So they've got a nice running collection there of some all-time classic Ampeg bass amps. And this is Universal Audio working with BrainWorx, who has done the emulation. It's the Portaflex was the name of this amplifier. Gigging amplifier, a great one, an all-time classic. And it's the plugin of the week. Universal Audio with BrainWorx, the Ampeg B-15N.